Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hey, Jeff. Okay. Woo. Okay. Okay. So I think I'm almost just about ready. So I'll start in 5 minutes, just like usual. That way we let people come in. Someone asked, can you explain a little about authentication authorization? So I'm not going to go over that in this workshop. There's a bunch of different ways you can do authentication and authorization. If you're just starting out in web development, I would highly recommend you search up something like Firebase, AWS, AWS, and like Google Cloud Services or Google Cloud Products also have a bunch of them too. But like they have offer a lot of services when you're just starting out to do authentication. It makes it really easy to do authentication and authorization. The sticky thing is with authentication and authorization is that like you accidentally send someone's password back in the response and boom, their password's leaked, or like you accidentally do something a little funky and then like it's a major security issue. So like what even a lot of small companies tend to do is like delegate it to cloud services. That way it's more secure and they're not the ones handling the actual data, the cloud services, and the cloud service would be in theory liable depending on how the data is leaked. If you have any like specific questions on it, then like I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities though. If you want to do authentication by yourself, you need like a database, you need your backend, and you need your front end. And then your authentication to the user would happen via the front end. Okay. Then yeah, I would recommend using the product. If you want to do it yourself, you like need to do like the whole process. You need like somewhere to store it, somewhere to access the storage, and then where the front end sees, like what the user sees, which shouldn't have direct access to the storage, or else that's like a big security issue. Yeah, you guys can ask questions now. I'm just like answering questions until 35. And then 35, I'm gonna like talk about more like npm node, uh like what's the difference, pretty basic stuff. This should have done before the React one. And I'm going to talk about ER and stuff like that, and like try to answer questions and how to use Node in your hackathon projects. I'm also going to discuss Express, which is a backend service that uses Node. This should be like a fairly simple workshop compared to the other ones, relatively. Lillian, are you like the not volunteer, but I don't know what they call them. I think volunteer for this workshop. The best mod. It'd be a stunning combo. Best or common practices. Okay. Um. Okay. I'll try to mention some best and common practices, but there's like when you're starting off, there's not too many best or common practices. Like there's only like one way to do stuff, and then um, like you kind of just do it that way. Like it's more like when you get to complex architectures that there's a different way to do something. So this is like a lower level than like React, for example. Like React is more complex than just doing a basic Node project. It has much more moving parts. You have to compile it. You have to do all this. Node, you kind of just have the JavaScript and you just run it. Are we continuing with the React stuff we're doing earlier? Switching gears, completely switching gears. Um, so like maybe reference React, but we're actually not going to talk about React. We're going to talk about what React is like used off of, like what React uses to actually get stuff done. Can you explain in some terms the difference between React and Node? Hopefully, at the end of this workshop, you guys will know the difference. But I'll give like a quick one right now. React is like a framework that just you do web development, specifically front end what the user sees, while Node is a runtime environment and also a shell. It's you can call it a bunch of things that uses the V8 engine for JavaScript. My teammate sent me a template with CSS and HTML stuff. I think files are just front end stuff. I forgot to run it by entering npm such to do it. So like if it's just HTML and CSS, then npm doesn't have any JavaScript to work off of, and npm like the entry point is a JavaScript and JS. So if there's some JS, then it depends on like which JS file is actually the start of it. Usually it's like index.js. That's usually like the starting place. So you can try something like node index.js. If there's a package.json, you can look in the package.json, and then you can see a scripts category, and you can see like what scripts are available. And if there's like a start script, then you do npm and then the name of the script command. Man, I read it like that, which I wanted to go over in the workshop later. So I'll definitely go over it. Would it be okay? I think I missed a question. Can we make API requests in Node? So definitely, that's exactly where you actually want to do it. So like if you have a website that's like the front end, the website is using like React or whatever, then your server is using Node with like Express or some other framework. Your server is what you want to make the API request, and you want your server to make the API request because to make an API request, you need an API key. An API key is like a unique identifier saying, "Hey, I'm legit." So not everybody can just spam it or whatever. So you don't want the user to have access. If you put it on your React project, everything in your React project, the user can look at the source code and view it, and it's just accessible to them. So you never want to give API keys or anything like that to the React project, unless you're doing a hackathon and it's a demo, basically. That's the only time that you would kind of like skip out on the back end, because then it's not a security concern. You're just trying to convey a concept. Would it be okay to ask what resource you recommend for learning Node in more depth after the workshop? If you want, after the workshop, after some stuff after the workshop, I can actually gather some links, and then like send them in the web development channel in the Discord. But if you search up Node.js and you look at the documentation, they have like this really, really nice documentation with like keynotes, and you can like skip and you can like look at everything. Are we doing some backend? Yeah, we're doing some backend, but first we're starting with npm and Node. Oh, it's already 37, so I'm going to start after I answer these last questions. It does not have package.json. Remember, there's something to make the npm command work. Well, there's no package.json. There's no npm command that could directly make it work that I can think of, at least. It depends on the project. What were the first steps we must do for this workshop? So you should download Node. Yeah, just install Node and Visual Studio Code. But you don't need it because there's nothing to like really follow along until like I'm talking about Express at the end. Okay. How to download Node? If you go to the Hackers Guide, there's the link. Or you could just search up Node download on Google and you could download it. Oh, someone linked it already. Faster than I could. So let me get started. Can you guys see my screen? You should. I think you should be able to. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go to a new folder because this was our React workshop. So I'm just gonna like Node. I'm just gonna name a Node for now. No reason to stress about the name. Okay, so first I wanted to talk about like, actually, let me stop sharing my screen. Let me just like talk to you guys like as an audience. First, I want to talk about Node and Npm. So like Node versus Npm. Node is a runtime environment. When you install Node, you get both of them. You get Node and Npm. Npm stands for Node Packaging Manager. And I wanted to go over this first and then start going over the actual project and whatnot. So Node allows you to run your code. Okay. Node allows you to run your code, while Npm allows you. I don't even know why he disconnected. I was trying to mute him. That's why I kind of went silent for a second. I was like, how do I mute him? But I couldn't. It didn't let me. I don't think I had permission to. But so Node is a runtime environment, right? It's a shell that you can run commands in. If you're familiar with like Bash or Python or MySQL, then all of those have some runtime environment / shell components. If you have a MySQL server and you type in MySQL, you're going to MySQL shell now. Or if you're using Bash, you can go into the Bash shell just by opening up an application on Linux or something, or a terminal on Linux or on Mac. Like all those are like concepts of a shell. A shell is like an environment where you have access to stuff. That sounds really vague and really weird, but in each shell, you have access to different things. So in Node, you specifically have access to JavaScript, specific JavaScript runtime. But you use JavaScript to have access to like the processes and the environmental variables and the arguments, and anything that you could have access to is through the things provided to you by that shell. Npm allows you to install stuff like React or Angular, SaaS, any technology that you're going to install using Npm. That being said, some of you might have heard of Yarn. Yarn is like an upgrade to Npm in that it caches and downloads multiple packages like faster than what Npm does. So like Npm is like the stock like downloader, and then you can like install Yarn online. And then once you have Yarn, it's like the improved like aftermarket one. Milton was a mod that was doing it. So Npm Node Packaging Manager. So when you install Node, you'll notice that you'll get Npm. Let me share my screen to start giving some visual. So if you open the terminal, to new terminal, or you open a terminal like on Windows, you just go like command prompt, anything like that, you can check Node and Npm. Now, when you install Node, like when you guys went to the website and you installed it, or hopefully you've already done so, you'll have access to Node and Npm. They're connected to each other. They're bundled together. So when you install one, you install the other. So what's the difference? That's like what I'm trying to stress right now, the difference between them before I continue. And then I'm going to move into like how does like React and other frameworks get into play. Make sure I can like switch between them. Do we need CSC? Oh, VSC. Is it recommended to use Yarn or Npm? You can use Npm. Like both of them are completely okay. If you like downloading a bunch of packages, Yarn's just going to be faster in the long run. Like if you start using Yarn. Okay, Npm Node Packaging Manager. It says Node isn't recognized. If Node isn't recognized, that means you need to reinstall Node. And like your Node installation messed up. And if you think you installed it, that means you need to add it to your path. I'm not going to go over that in this workshop because it's a very niche error, but like you could search up online, like add Node to path. And then you'll find like tutorials on how to add it to that. Yeah. So like Yarn, I don't have a Yarn installed, But if I did, it's exactly the same as npm. Like the commands do the same functionality. You can run the same things that npm does. You could do yarn start, you could do yarn run build. If you're familiar with those, there's no difference in that regard, but how it handles what it does is slightly different than npm. You can search up like statistics between yarn and npm, like which one's faster, which one does this more. Yarn pretty much beats npm out of all of them, but like npm is like the stock that comes with Node, but yarn is something that you have to get afterwards. You actually install like yarn. You can install it globally using npm, and then you can get yarn. And now I can use yarn if I make a new terminal. Now be loaded because the script is available in the system. So I would need to like mess around with my yarn because I just installed it. But basically, I got Chocolatey installed too. It's just a different packaging manager. So both of them are packaging managers and both of them are completely fine to use. Okay. So is there any questions about Node and npm? Because I wanted to stress that because that's actually something a lot of developers don't understand when they start using Node or npm. Do we have to install every time we don't have to install Node, but we have to install the dependencies. So I'll just go into the React project that we did like in the React workshop. And let me explain how Node integrates into React. So this package.json and this package.lock are part of npm. Not just Node. All npm projects, Node projects have these two things. So I will open a second Visual Studio Code to compare an empty one and a React one, because I think that's like one of the best ways to do it. So let me open the one that I have. Okay. So I just opened an empty folder. And if I wanted to start a new project with npm and Node, I'll do npm init. You're going to ask me like package name. I'll just do like test. That's just fine. It's going to ask me for a default version, a description. This is a test project. The entry point, which usually is index.js, the test command, a Git repository if it wants me to connect the Git repository, keywords, author. I'll just leave these all blank. Is this okay? Yes, it is. And then it's going to auto-generate a package.json. So I want to compare this one to the automatic generated one in React. Can I access the React workshop recording later? Yes. Yeah, we'll give you guys the recording after the hackathon because Hopin gives us the recording after the hackathon. It's like a logistics constraint. I'm sorry about that. I would connect a Python API to the project through Node.js. Yes, you would. If you're crunching for time, you can do it through like your front end, which it wouldn't be Node. But then like if you're actually deploying that, you don't want to deploy that in the real life because it's a like super big security issue and you might get like easily hacked basically, or at least not hacked, but they just have your passcode, so it's not hacking. Okay, so this is the React one and this is the one that I just generated. So we can see that like it asked me for these stuff. It asked me for a test script and I just put no test script, and it has like a basic thing that's going to tell me, oh, there's no test script. Doesn't have an author. It's kind of like the basic stuff, right? So if I do like npm tests, it's gonna exactly run this command. That's what these scripts do. I did not mean to click the button. Let me close that. Okay, so if I run npm test, it does exactly what it said it would do. It says error no test specified, and then it exit with an error code. See above for more details. So it does exactly what it's supposed to do. If I go to the React project, you can see that the scripts that it auto-generates for us have these four: React scripts, React scripts, React scripts, React scripts. You got start, build, test, eject. So when I do in my React project npm tests, or npm, let's do tests here. When I do npm test, you can see that the first line that it outputs, let me scroll up. Let me quit it so I can scroll up real quick. Okay, npm test has too much output. Let me do npm start. Okay, when I do npm start, you can see the first line here is the line that it exactly says in the package.json. So I want to show that connection to you guys because it's important to understand how the package.json directly relates to any npm or node project. Okay, so this new initialized one, it says the main's like index.js, but we don't actually have anything calling it or anything of the sort. So now I'm going to start like introducing Express and that. But before I do you guys have any questions about npm and node? I think it's important to understand them before I move on to Express. I'm not going to touch the React project. It was just to compare a project that has stuff inside of the package.json to a fresh project that has just the basic, the bare bones. Node is a lot of scripting, not necessarily. But we're going to start fresh. Yeah, we're going to start fresh. That was just a comparison to show you guys how this scripts tests connect with that. Yeah. I'm going to show how to directly execute via this terminal in Visual Studio Code. You can do it in a regular terminal. Yeah, you could open a PowerShell or a Windows terminal. In fact, this terminal is a PowerShell. You can look right here and it says PowerShell. But it's just like inside of Visual Studio Code. It's just like aesthetically more pleasing, but it's exactly the same functionality. So npm is run the script, but Node will run the actual project. That's actually a great question. So like I was saying, Node is the runtime environment, but npm is this thing that installs it. npm has evolved to more than just installing. Now it also does like running scripts, handling your project, like your package.json, and a bunch of other stuff. And behind, like when it runs this command or when it runs this command, it's using the Node runtime environment. So this command and whatever we run in these scripts have access to whatever the Node runtime environment provides, which is really important. VS Code is really big, so I don't want to install my PC. It's actually really, I don't think it's that big. I think it's like a couple of megabytes. So npm runs inside of the Node environment and can be used to manage the backend. Yeah, npm, you use it to run the Node environment. So let me get started with the Express example. That way we can make that connection. So because I named, when I was doing the npm init, my main is index.js, I'm going to name my file index.js. So to start off, we could make like an HTTP server with just raw Node, but I'm not going to do that because it might look a little confusing, especially if you haven't done web development before. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to install Express into this project. Now this project right now, there's no dependencies. You don't see a word dependency here. Just to compare it to the React project where we see dependencies right here. And it has a list of dependencies. So I'm going to close the React project because I'm done making comparisons. And I'm ready to actually like install in our project. So to install anything into your project, into your package.json, you have to make sure you're in the same folder as it. So I'm in Node, and this is the Node folder. And I want to install and whatever the package name is. So if I want to install Express, then I'll put Express, and then it's going to install Express for me. Let me see. So npm handles more than stuff than just starting the project. Yeah, it handles like installing, starting. Node is just like a tool that npm kind of uses to run the runtime environment. How do you open a new folder without quitting VS Code? I had to like go to my taskbar and I had to right click a new window. That's like the only way I've actually thought of doing it actually. Npm Init allows you to start a new npm project. So when you do npm init, which I could like do really quick, really just like in node test folder. If I did npm init, it's going to ask me for like a bunch of information. It's going to ask me for like a name, a version. Once you go through all that, and then it's going to make a package.json with all your things that you inputted in the command line. So I'm going to delete that since it was just a test. Was wondering if you're going to show it. I just, okay, oh yeah, okay, perfect. Second, the package.schlock is literally the package.json's dependencies, but written out very, very resolved. Like, not resolved, I just read resolved, so I said resolved. I meant very verbose. So it says every single thing the dependency needs, what its dependencies needs, and so forth. So it's a very, 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 it has all this information, even though in our package.json, we only added one dependency. It's to make sure that your dependency is exactly like whoever installs your project. Jeff, I actually don't know what you mean. What do you mean how do you open a new folder without creating VS Code? You can do file, open folder, and then you can select the folder that you want. So I'm in the node folder. So then I would open this folder. Is that what you mean? Okay. So now it's like the part that you guys can follow along with the npm install express, npm init. That way you guys can get your project started. Can I use voice? I don't have permission to give you voice, sadly. You can make any folder you want and use that one for VS Code. Yeah, exactly what Jose said. Okay. So how do we use Express or pretty much anything that we install? If you're using like a new technology, I highly recommend you just search it up, and they have like a tutorial on their front page. Like almost every single framework or library has that. I highly recommend it. That's the first thing you do, not just like search it up on YouTube or something like that. Because the YouTube's going to give you like the SparkNotes versions, and the one on the website's already the SparkNotes version. So it's like a double SparkNotes. So like if you're using like a brand new technology, I would definitely like suggest that firsthand. For Node, for Express with Node to be specific, the first thing you start off with is you import Express. Wait, you can, no, I mean folder. Oh, okay. So the first thing you do is you use Express. So, damn, wait a second. No, no, no. Milton, we need. No, I'm so sorry. Okay. My beloved. I clicked ing and I can't see Node. I clicked select an ing. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Okay. Select a language. After you download Visual Studio Code, you should just open a folder. Oh, I get what you mean. Like you should just select JavaScript. So Express and Node both use JavaScript if you wanted to start, but you need to open a folder firsthand so you can actually get some dependencies in your package.json. Okay, did I miss any questions? Okay, no. Okay. So, where was I? Oh, I don't know. I deleted that. Okay, we're supposed to import Express, right? So with all the files and folders. So the step with all the files and folders, I did first file, open folder. I made a new folder. I opened it. So I made this node folder. I selected the folder. It's going to open a blank folder. I did npm init, which was that whole asking me about the project. You want to answer to the best of your abilities. It's going to make a package.json. Your package.json is going to be pretty bland, but that's fine. You do npm and sorry about the hiccups. And you npm install express, and then you installs express for you. npm init didn't work, so I'll stay a little after the workshop to like help you, or like this workshop will end a little bit early. That way, there's like debugging time. But it should just like work right out of the box, like by default. Okay, so let's actually get to the express part. So with express, first, after you require express, it gives you a function that like actually bundles express for you. Use express, we have everything in terms of these like callable functions where we define endpoints, and those endpoints, when they're accessed, call this specific function. So for example, if we were to specify the endpoint of just slash, which is like everything, and we were to give it a function with like response or response that, oh my gosh. So this means that this endpoint calls this callback function with the response, the request, is a P, with the request, the response, and the next. Okay. So most projects have like a butt ton of these, like with a slash, with a like a users, or like a users with ID. So you can get really innovative with this. I specifically chose this little string right here just to give an example of, we can have an endpoint which nests inside, and we have a parameter. So like we can put users/1, and then we have access to it, like it calls this callback function even though we don't have a 1 here. And this says to name it ID. But for now, I'll just leave it like this. Okay. So how do we actually start the server? Wait, let me check for questions. What is the use function? Okay, that's actually a good question. I should explain the use function. So the use function is a function that we use to, it's called middleware in Express. So when they communicate to our server, the server checks all the use functions, and if the use function, the string matches, then what it's going to do is it's going to call that callback function, and then if you call next, it's going to call the next use. So it's like use this callback function for this specific endpoint. Does that make sense, Daniel? So the use function, let me show you. So the use function, if we were to have like users, like hackers, let's do like sponsors and hackers. Then when we go to wherever we're like hosting this, so usually be like localhost, like 5,000. Then we go to like /users, and then it will return. Well, I didn't have slash. I shouldn't do slash sponsors. /sponsors, and it will return whatever is in this string. That's like the final objective. But right now, if we were to run like our project, which we use Node to do so, it won't actually do anything. It's going to like compile all this stuff. It's going to do all that, but then it's just going to like kind of quit the program because we're not actually listening on any ports. So we need to do express.listen, and then it's going to take in a port. So you can like, what ports usually use? I'm going to say 5,000. And then we do a callback. The response, right? And then we listen to the port via that. Is there any questions so far? we good? Are we bad? Because I don't want to lose you guys with the npm Init. For sure. Does everybody have like the quick summary of what we have covered so far? Okay. So what we covered so far is Node and npm are bundled. They're slightly different in the fact of they're completely different. Node is a runtime environment for JavaScript code. That's what Node is. It's a runtime environment for JavaScript code. npm is a bundling manager, and as well, it's a way of running your code, bundling your code, testing your code, writing linters for your code. It's like a bunch of different functionalities that it has that allows your code to be like run in the Node environment and do different stuff with the process, with your environmental variables and stuff like that. But Node is just the runtime environment. It's just like what's running when you run your code. While npm is like what you use to install and do stuff like that. So the commands that we use, npm init equals makes new project. npm, every other npm command that you do except for npm install package. Do you do it in PowerShell? Do you do it wherever you want? But what's important is you are in a specific folder. So I'm in node test, which node test has my package. I shouldn't be in node test. I should be in the other one. This one. I should be in node, where node has my node modules, my package.json, my index.js. So you want to be in the same one. Yeah, when you run npm init, it should only make package.json. But package.json. I originally ran npm init. I ran npm init and it gives me the package.json. Then I ran npm install express. npm install express. npm install express will make the package.lock and all the node modules. Then I manually created this express file. We're about to just console log listening on port 5000. Let me go back. Hopefully that helped a little. Okay. So the little hopping things keep on popping up. Okay, so if I do node / in, it gives me a little message says listening on port 5000. Is it required to install? I don't get what you mean by every time you use Express. Like you have to install it when you initially use Express, but then after you install Express for the project, you have it installed. Now, if you want to do a new project, then you have to use Express. So if I go to localhost 5000, it's gonna be like loading, and that's because we never send back a response. So we go here, we go response, send. We send a response. Hey, I am response. Okay, now let's reload the page. Oh, well, I have to go back to localhost 5000. Okay. Press send response. Be quick. Am I doing it? Yeah, it should send Rebecca a response. response. Let me check. Let me try putting it to all of them, and then getting a response like that. Post 5,000. I actually don't know why my express code isn't sending a response. Express.use/response am response. And then next you create the index. Yeah, I created the index.js myself. But this should be sending a response. Let me try sending a status code too. That's actually a good recommendation. Like 400. Let's see if it just gets that. Well, Daniel, do you see like if I'm doing like a simple mistake somewhere? I'll try running. Oh, I think it's because I didn't reload my. Yeah, I didn't reload my thingy, so I was doing the response right. Let me remove the status codes. I was gonna go crazy. I was like, what? I was gonna say save and reload. I'm so used to React auto reloading. I was like, okay. So for sponsors, sponsors page. Well, it's not really a page, but hackers response. Okay. So I'm gonna minimize the terminal since I already have it running. Okay, so we have an express. We can call this an API already or a backend, even though it doesn't really do anything. That when you go to slash, it sends this. When you go to sponsors, it sends this. When you go to hackers, it sends that. So if I go to, look, it's already here. I go to sponsors, it's like, hey, I'm response. I forgot I have to restart my terminal. Refresh for sponsors. What's happening is sponsors is not getting ran because this happens first. So let me make that happen first and restart the terminal. Now let's get the sponsors response, and we go back to slash. It's just, hey, I'm response. We go to hackers response. Each one sends back a unique value. So what's like the usefulness? How do we apply this to a backend server? So for a backend server, here is where you would do like, you would search up whatever API you're using. You would put the API string here. You would do the whole request, and then you would send back whatever the API process data is. That's what you would do here, and it's plain JavaScript code. When you use arguments or when you use any process environment variables, that's going to be more so not for web development, but that's just something that Node supplies. And Node isn't just for web development. It's also for other types of development, like server-side stuff. One thing I did want to show is the feature of using the next. So for like we use next here, we reloaded here. What's going to happen is if we don't send this response, it says cannot get slash. Oh, because I'm not at sponsors. I meant to get sponsors. So sponsors still goes, right? But if you guys remember, if I only had like this with the sponsors on the bottom so that this gets ran first. So sponsor gets now overridden, but it doesn't override slash. So slash just gets top priority. Then I only get hey, I'm response. But if I do next, refresh. Oh, wait, I forgot to comment out the response. My bad. Then I'm going to get sponsors. Like it next kind of, you'd have to do some logic here. But next just goes to the next use statement that's applicable still. But it's also simpler to just kind of like format your code so whatever should be on top of the like overall parent is just like on top of it. So you don't have to like do too much sticky stuff with Next. It's hard to maintain then. Wait, could you repeat what the API and the rest.send? The point is the backend you can use languages through the API and connects it with your website. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's exactly right. So basically, like here, right here, right here, right here. Let's say you're making a backend for a website that you do /sponsors, and for some reason you have access to the ShellHacks database and you can get all the sponsors. Or you do /hackers and you have access, or you have your own database that has all the hackers. So here's where you would do the request to that database, and then you would send it in your response, whatever you just get from that request. So you'd like search up like MySQL in Express, database integration, and it's nothing too crazy. Like you can just do exactly what this is doing, like right here, doing a query. Then instead of console.log result, you would just rest.send whatever you get from the API or the database, API or database. It's exactly the same concept. The most important part is to actually get your endpoints running, and then you just do the exact same thing as you regularly would with an API or database. To call a Python function from Node.js. Example for ML integration to your website. Okay. So is there any questions before I move on to like specifically helping people debug their Npm Init and stuff? Before I move on to that? Okay. So if there's just the like Npm Init issue and like the folder issues, then I'm gonna let you guys go from here, and then I'll move to the Discord, and I ask that the people having the issues can move to the Discord with me, and I'll like stay in the Discord. That way I can help you there, and you can screen share and whatnot. Okay. But other than that, thank you guys for coming to the after. Like I'm ending it now, and then we're moving to the Discord so we can do the debugging and helping. How feasible is doing a database so we can make data non-permanent? For the hackathon, I would not make a database unless you've done it before or you're really passionate about it, just because it might take too much time. If you prepared beforehand, like yesterday, or like you're still doing it now, like you're starting coding now, then I think you have enough time to do a database. But if you're going to start coding like tonight after some workshops, then I wouldn't recommend doing a database, because then you're more crunched on time. So you have to like take into account your time and how interested you are in doing a database. But other than that, thank you guys for attending Node.js. For those of you having issues, just join me on the Discord. But thank you for our last event. Woo! And I hope you guys luck, and I wish you well on all your hackathon projects. I'm super excited to see them.